Hello, my introverted friend.
Hmm. Hello, my dear. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
We can cut that out.
Sometimes introverts just aren't heard very well.
Okay.
I was just actually checking my microphone, but
But lovely segue, lovely segue. Well, this week we're going to be talking about the difference between introverts and extroverts. I am a self identified extrovert. And you?
I'm a self-identified introvert. Also worth noting that there's a spectrum,
Of
and I'm
course.
I'm probably a little bit more in the middle of the spectrum than you'd think, but I land more in introversion, I would say.
We will be debunking this idea that extroverts are just very outgoing people and that introverts are shy and quiet.
Hmm.
I think that's the very mainstream idea of this. But we have
Definitely.
asked our good friend ChatGPT to tell us about the difference between introverts and extroverts. So, Steph, would you like to start us off by telling us the main features of an extrovert?
Sure. So the first thing is that you people recharge by being around other people.
Correct.
Are you expecting me to comment there?
If a comment comes out of your mouth in an inspired way, then sure, but don't comment for the sake of
Okay. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to leave my thoughts. My
it.
thoughts will come because, okay, the next one is that extroverts often feel energized by social settings and group activities.
Yes.
So this one was, okay, that one I'm like, "Ooh," like I have a reaction to this idea of being energized by social settings, even though term social settings to me, I'm like, oh, don't make me, don't make me. But I can be recharged by being around other people. I don't think it's true that introverts can't, but there's a limit to the amount. And I think this idea of like social settings and group activities has something different than even just the idea of other people. It's like other people in this specific environment of peopling. That's the, uh,
Yes.
uh, yeah. Extroverts also enjoy engaging in conversation, including casual chat or banter, and tend to be more outwardly expressive and spontaneous. They often
Hmm.
think out loud and process things as they speak.
Now you're an external processor.
I
I nearly
know.
said processor then. Processor. That is something you do.
It's a it's a an anomaly. Yeah.
I think I do externally process.
It's funny because my husband Mike is a more of a classic introvert, and our style of communication is very different. And one of the things that we run up against is that I need to speak and talk and get my thoughts going that way. I can also do it through writing, right? So it's just I need a medium of translations. I can also do it in my own head, but I tend to get more anxious there. And I also think it might be worth exploring like the intersections of introversion and anxiety because I don't sometimes know what's what.
Mm.
But Mike, who is an introvert without anxiety, needs to think about the things that I'm bringing to him before he responds. And what that does is it often kind of creates the situation where I'm like, here's how I'm feeling, blah, 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 blah. And he's quiet and says nothing for like minutes and minutes, at which point I get frustrated and leave because I feel completely like I feel like, are you kidding me? Did I just not say all of these things and you have just completely ignored me? And this is one of those areas where I'm like, maybe like my introversion actually isn't all the way over as far as his, because I do have some kind of tendency in there to need to talk and be spoken back to. But then I'm like, okay, thank you very much. Goodbye. I need to go process that by myself.
And when you say you need to leave, you mean leave the room, not walking out the door with your
Yeah.
suitcase or anything like
Not
that.
with it, not
Okay.
yet. We are not there.
Okay. Let's go through the points of introverts because then we can share and compare. Because
Okay.
I tell you what, I seem to have a disproportionate number of introverts in my life, and I never cease to be confused by you guys. Anyway, introverts recharge by spending time alone. They often feel drained after lots of social interaction, especially in large or noisy groups. They tend to enjoy deep, meaningful conversations over small talk. That's me, absolutely.
So you can cross section.
Of course, of course.
This is not
And
a black and white
no,
case.
they may appear quiet, reflective, or reserved. And they often need time to process thoughts internally before speaking, which is what you
Yeah.
just spoke
This is,
to, not being the
yeah,
case for you.
not the case for me.
We do live in a world, I think, that seems to elevate extroversion. But that's somehow the ideal. I've worked with a number of clients who are introverted and carry a lot of judgment about being introverted, friends as
Mm-hmm.
well, because they've been told that it's not okay. One of my friends says one of the things she used to hear all the time growing up was people would say, "Oh, you're very quiet. You're very quiet." In large groups, this would be not one on one. "You're very quiet." And she said it was the most, she experienced that as being, as it was so formative for her that she was wrong, which then brought in this whole fear that she's boring. And she sees as actually being part of her social anxiety is how her introversion was responded to by those around her.
Absolutely. I completely relate to that. Part of the work that I have done in my post 40 life, right? So, listeners may or may not know that this was a time where I recovered from an eating disorder. And a lot of that was about deconstructing these ideas I had about who I was supposed to be and what about me was wrong. One of the big themes that came up was my shame of introversion. And I've done a lot of processing on that. But even when I talk to friends, I actually spoke to a group of friends from college recently, and we talk regularly at this point on the Marco Polo app. And I said something, and this is a group of extroverts, and I said something about, how I was with a neighborhood in a neighborhood party or something like that, and I needed to go home. And I just kind of left. like I'm out of here. I don't like to do the goodbye rounds. Like, no, I gotta go now. And I said, like something about as an introvert, like that's just how I roll. And my friends came back and they were like, "No, you're not." Like kind of like, "Don't say that about yourself. Like you're not an
Oh,
introvert."
don't put
And I thought
yourself down like that. Is
it
that the
was
vibe?
interesting. Well, yeah, I mean it wasn't so extreme, but it would there was a hint of like, "No, you're not." Yeah, kind of like, "Don't say that about yourself." And I had two reactions to that. One of which was, it's interesting that you think I'm not, but that's also because I talk a lot here. But that doesn't mean I'm not an introvert. Like there's again that perception of an introvert as shy and quiet, which doesn't necessarily. When I feel safe and comfortable, I am not shy and quiet, but it doesn't make me all of a sudden an extrovert. And two, that there was this idea that being an introvert was less worthy. I mean, and that came across. So I did a little bit of like advocacy there, when I spoke back, and I was like, by the way, I am an introvert, and that is okay with me. It's fine to be one. And by the way, that is not what introversion looks like. But for a long time, especially growing up in a family of extroverts who wielded the power, being an introvert was a weakness. And it was also explicitly a bit frowned upon, but it was actually weakness in that if I didn't get there fast enough, if I wasn't loud, if I wasn't quick, if I needed the time and space, I got bulldozed, right? So there was something about being an introvert that I internalized as a problem, both because of the explicit nature of how that's discussed in society, but also because of my experience of what it actually means to be an introvert in an extroverted world and in a dominant extroversion, family. Like it rendered me a bit on the back foot.
When I met some of your family 2 years ago now, and I came to your house, and I think it would have been, was it your grandparents and then your great aunt? Was there an Aunt Mary or someone?
Aunt Mary Lou. Yeah, Aunt Mare.
Aunt Mary. Aunt Mary. So
Yeah.
I went to your house, and so there was probably 14, 15 people there, including the kids, maybe more
Mm-hmm.
than that. And when we were all in the dining area, you were holding court at one point, and you were telling this story, this anecdote, which was very funny, and you were laughing, and everyone was laughing. And I remember for me, it was very interesting looking at that and going, "Oh, I haven't seen that side of Steph." And again, this may not be introvert extrovert thing, and there's probably something around here being around your family and the fact that you and I probably haven't been in groups together very much at all,
Mm.
unless we've been running an event of some kind. And so, yes, it was like a louder version of you, I would say. Not that you're quiet either. I can't, it was a different vibe, it was a different energy, but it was you holding court. And I remember, not quite sure where I'm going with this anecdote, but just
Mm.
seeing that side of you in your family was interesting.
I wonder if this is, and if I wonder if people will relate to this, because I think that the whole idea of introvert extrovert is again there's a spectrum, and I would imagine that most people will be more like it's a bell curve, right? Like how many of us are actually just introverts or just extroverts without any kind of gray area. There are times where when I am feeling the most safe, I am absolutely that way. I present as an extrovert and I enjoy it. And I come from a family of storytellers. I come from a family of court holders, and I can do that. And I don't know if that's potentially something learned or if it's something that does feel to some extent like a part of just who I am, and I can go there. But I can do that for a certain amount of time and then I am done. And this is the way that feel it the most potently is like I have a certain threshold of extroverted behavior that I can engage with. And when I'm in it, I am in it and I love it. And I do gain energy from that. I need it. And then when I hit like the tank gets full, it's like quick. It's like this. It's like the way I used to get hungry or full. It's just like, okay, it's over, it's over, it's over. And then I gotta get out. And this is where I have the most trouble with the regulation of my own introversion is like when I hit my limit and when I've recognized that, which I didn't always recognize, I feel very much like I'm shutting down now and I need to go. I need to go. And this is why I make exits out of, like I said, I make exits from parties really quickly. Um, because it seems like there's just like, I need now. I don't need anymore. And that's how it presents a lot. It's actually a pattern across concepts in my life, but introversion and extroversion is a place where that exists. So at that time, I was probably just still filling my tank.
Mm-hmm. This is so interesting to me because when you're with your family in those situations and you take this position of holding court, I'm thinking about myself with my family, and it's probably when I'm my quietest. I don't hold court because I don't know, do you know what's coming to mind? I don't know if I should say this on the podcast. I don't feel like they're really interested in what I've got to say. In fact, my dad has explicitly told me a couple of times that I'm boring him. And so I'm just like, well, then you choose the topic of conversation. I'm not. I'm just not going there.
Huh.
So again, and this is, I guess, the error that sometimes gets made, that this is about how outgoing you are or how
Right.
loud you are or whether you are the speaker in a moment. And the most extroverted person I know is my sister-in-law. And she, have I ever told you what my brother says about extroversion? He's got this whole bit that he does.
No.
And I've heard it a couple of times, but it still makes me laugh because he's so funny when he does it. But he likens Kate's extroversion to almost like a, as in, she needs to, hang on, I don't know if I should say
What happened?
no, I don't know if I should say this because I'm sure Kate will probably listen to the new podcast. Hi, Kate. And Kate's there when he said this. I'm not saying anything she hasn't heard before. But he does
Okay.
this thing where he says, okay, what is the most extroverted country? What country has the reputation for being the most extrovert? Exactly. USA. What state has a
Yeah.
reputation for being extremely extrovert?
Texas.
My sister-in-law's Texan. And he says, and even the Texans think Kate's a bit much.
Oh.
And he does this whole bit and he finds it hilarious and she's like, oh yeah, I've heard you do this like a dozen times. I've only heard it twice, so it's still funny to me the way he does it. But it might be worth us taking a detour into thinking about how an introvert and how an extrovert, how it gets in the way when you're an introvert and I'm an extrovert, how we might misunderstand each other. And I know we spoke a little bit about this when we were talking about this as an idea for an episode, because I remember growing up, friends that I now can look and go, okay, they were introverts. At the time, I wouldn't have known what introvert or extrovert was. When
Mm.
they needed to withdraw, they needed some time on their own to recharge. That to me always felt like a rejection. It always felt like a type of abandonment, that I'm too much. And I think that's where I'm much more likely to go to a place of I'm too much than I'm not enough. And I think it's from this dynamic with introverts that I didn't know was a thing, of people needing time on their own. And I'm thinking they need time away from me. And it felt personal to me.
We had this discussion when you came to visit because I needed time away from you. No, I'm just kidding. How did it come up? I'm trying to remember like
We were
why
just walking to get the car. We were just talking about this episode.
yeah, but I don't remember the context of which we even arrived at understanding because when you said that to me, and again, we're going to need to clarify like the cross sections here because I'm sure I don't speak, I'm positive I don't speak for all introverts when I say this. But my experience of the extrovert is that they have a skill that I don't, and I really admire it in many ways because the fact that I do need that time to myself feels like, well, at this point in my life, I'm not apologizing for it and I'm going to take it. But there is a part of me that feels like I should stay, that I should actually be more socially engaged, and that this idea of retreating is a defect. So there's more likely to be an insecurity in my leaving than this feeling of like, I need you to get away from me. It's going to be more like, shoot, I need to go. And I shouldn't have to. And I feel kind of bad that I want to. And then implicitly in that, I think you might be judging me. So there's something about the fact that I need to leave that when I do it, I assume I don't feel that sense of like, you're too much, give me space. And again, I don't think that's going to be true for every introvert. But I personally don't feel that way. And I actually feel worse that I'm leaving. And I feel like you might judge me. And now my defenses go up. And now we're going to start talking about the avoidant attachment. And that's like a piece of this too. And I think also trauma responses are a piece of this, of how much of oneself is, or how much of our behavior and experience of this is coming from actual introversion or extroversion, or trauma responses of feeling too much or not enough, or attachment wounds of, you might think about anxious attachment. The coming towards could present as an extroversion when it's actually more of an I need you, I need you, I need you to need me, I need a space in the room. That's not necessarily if coming from extroversion. It could be coming from attachment. Whereas an avoidant could be the retreater, and that might not be introversion, it might be avoidance. It's really hard to tell, but I think my particular combination of avoidant attachment plus introversion plus not good enoughness is such a baseline of insecurity that I don't perceive it as you're too much. I'm always going to perceive it as I am not good enough. And that's where my feelings are when that's going on. And I would never imagine, and when you said this to me, that you sort of had this feeling of like that you were like it was a rejection on my part. That was so foreign to me. That was a really interesting way of, it made me feel more safe. It kind of like made me feel more like, oh, good, then I'm not the only one. Like, I don't know, just this perception of being so wrong.
Yeah.
It sort of felt like, oh, maybe I'm not. Like, maybe I just need some space.
I think I've traumatized a few introverts in my time inadvertently with this whole process, because in a moment, let's say, I don't know, I'm hanging out with someone who's an introvert and they've had their fill and they're ready to go. Because I would be thinking it's about me. I would never in that time, in those years earlier on in my life, it would never have occurred to me that this was just what they needed. So I would have gone on the whole, oh no, stay out. I probably would have, I say made them feel, but kind of made them feel like a party pooper for leaving
Yeah.
because I'm not ready for you to go. And so when you're talking about you seeing this as, or part of you maybe seeing this as somehow not defective, but like something that you should be able to do that you can't, that brings us on to the challenge of being an extrovert, which is unstructured time alone. And no, not I don't know, even unstructured isn't quite the right word. But one of my worst fears is a weekend of no plans. And I have
Okay.
friends who will say that's my favorite thing, is to have a weekend without plans. And I'm like, it is my
Yes.
worst nightmare. Gosh, when I've had weekend plans and then they've been cancelled at the last minute, it is the initial response, the initial reaction in my body is fear.
Oh my gosh, it's the opposite for me. And
Relief.
and I yes, if you book me up, I don't
Mm-mm.
want to be friends with you.
Hmm.
I'm just like, no, leave me alone.
Yeah, which just gets me onto another bugbear of mine with the introverts in my life, is that the introverts, I would say, this is not mathematical, but I would say my introverted friends are 10 times more likely to cancel than my extroverted friends. And because
Mm.
being reliable, and when I say I'm going to be somewhere or do something, it would take
Mm-hmm.
so much for me to cancel. So when I feel like people are canceling on me more easily, I feel a kind of way about it. I
Yeah.
have a reaction and I feel a bit mad about it.
Fair. Here's my theory on that. I was a canceller for most of my life. I was so unreliable. Now, that also had intersections with other things. Like there's
Sure.
reasons why. But I think that and I'm no longer like that. So I am a woman of my word now. When I make a plan with you, I'm going to uphold my plan. But the reason why I think I can is because I own my introversion and I don't overbook. So I think what I used to do is that I used to like accept every invitation that was coming along, and then I resented it because I could not keep up with it. But because it was like socially normal to do that, I was just overextending myself. And then when it would come to it, I'd be like, I don't have capacity. I absolutely don't have capacity. And it would be so upsetting to me that I would cancel, and like, the guilt of canceling would pale in comparison to the no, I don't have capacity, and the capacity would win, or the lower capacity would. When I started to shift and this happened actually during COVID. So I know that most extroverts hated COVID, but a lot of introverts kind of liked it. And it gave us permission to be not doing stuff, and nobody could say anything about it because it was all we were supposed to be doing. And during this time, that was my life turned around. Like that was the I don't know if I'd have been the same if I'd be here right now if it wasn't for COVID. During that time, I realized I can't go back to every weekend having multiple things to do a day on both of those days. This cannot happen anymore, even on a low level, even on a small playing field of like just an hour or two commitment. It just is too much. And so I've structured my life in such a way now where I do not overbook. And that helps me stay accountable because I'm in accordance with myself, right? So now I'm honoring that need, and I don't feel I don't feel bad about saying no, I can't, even if I can. Like technically I could go, but I'm not because I already have things to do that day, like earlier in the day, and I don't want to overbook that. But I think that it makes sense to me that you would feel this sense of canceling feels rude. And I think it is, but I think it's more of a systemic issue at times about the pressure that introverts feel to do, and that we live in a hustle culture. I mean, it is built in, doing is built into our expectation to a degree that I think is unnatural, at least for introverts. And yet we have to, because if we don't, we're going to be left behind. You know, we're not going to be as successful. We're not going to be as accepted in our social circles, like all of these things. So I think there's a lot of resentful introverts who are just sort of like doing that passive aggressive self sabotage, which is really a version of standing up for ourselves in some way. It's just a bit, misguided.
I think that's a really helpful way of putting it, and a really, hopefully, a helpful point to the listener as well. If you see yourself as introvert, if you can respect your introversion, you can look at, how do I get this balance right between how much socializing and how much interactions with others I want and need versus how much time I actually need. Because I can I can definitely understand it conceptually. I can understand it conceptually. The idea of, oh, I'm going to be the person who wants to do all those things in a couple of weekends time, and when it comes to it, like, oh, actually I feel the same as I always do. Am I along the right lines? Am I doing
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. It feels
Okay.
like you, yes, yes. Go
Okay,
ahead.
good.
You got this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That's such an interesting dynamic.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just, I'm trying to think about like my questions for extroverts. Like, you know what I think extroverts can do that I can't seem to do? You have, and again, it's listed here actually. And one of the traits that was listed by ChatGPT was, and maybe you won't register it because you also said something different for you, but enjoy engaging in conversation, including casual chat or banter. Casual chat, I hate it. And I can't do it. And I'm so awkward in it. I would much rather, if we could just jump right into our life story, I will be comfortable and then I can spend more time with you. But if we're just doing, there's some kind of lightheartedness of the extrovert, of someone who's just like happy to be there and can just socialize in this more like, I don't want to say, I don't mean superficial in a negative way. I mean it like, it's just a more
Yeah,
surface chatter.
yeah.
I find that so difficult. And the thing is, I can think of extroverts in my head right now who I just love and I admire it in them. I feel like, oh gosh, they just make you feel so at ease. And it does when there's somebody who can just do that. They're doing that work for me and I really appreciate it, but I find it so difficult to lead the charge on that. And I also find it difficult to respond to it for any length of time. I start to become really awkward. And so I'm wondering, as somebody you cited yourself as somebody who does like deep conversations, and obviously this is true, as we have now 2 podcasts of deep conversations. But when it comes to this more lighthearted piece, I don't know, can you explain to me how you do it? Like, and also what that experience is from a felt perspective.
I think it really depends on the situation for me. So I have a friend, Sam, who is extrovert, and she can chat to anybody. She's just moved to a brand new area and she has already met like a dozen people. She's telling me about all these new people. And I can do it, but not to the same extent as her. So I'm wondering if you might be feeling about sort of extroverts in general, how I look at Sam and I'm like, wow, I wish I could be that relaxed that I would just strike up a conversation with anyone. I like it when people strike up conversations with me, random people, assuming that they're not threatening in any way. Because I think, oh, great, I know they want to talk to me, so now I can do this. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty, which is a personality trait in me, about whether somebody wants to talk to me. So I went to this event with a friend of mine, and we were sat on a table with another couple. So there was 4 of us sitting on the same table together. And so it was like, okay, we're sat with this couple. So I said hello and introduced ourselves, and we managed to find this common ground that my friend was learning Greek, and this woman was from Crete. So they had this connection as well. And we were able to have light-hearted, quite surface level chit chat and found out about their lives and their cats. She said to me after, she's like, how do you do that? And I thought, you must be feeling how I feel when I look at my friend Sam. So I think there's different levels
Yeah.
of it. For me, there's something like it's a bit of a safety thing where I need to know if you're interested in speaking to me. There are some extroverts or just more outgoing people who will just talk to anybody. So I can do the whole go along to a meetup, go to somewhere where I don't know anyone. If there's like some kind of structure or agenda, so if it is a discussion group or if there is like, I know what the lines are. And I went to a speed networking event, you know, like speed dating, and you go around, you have 3 minutes with the different people and you're finding out about their businesses. Fine. There are boundaries. I know I'm talking to this person for 3 minutes and then they're going to talk to me. However, if I were to go to a social event, a party or something like that, where it's like, I don't know who these people are, what the boundaries are, who wants to talk to who, I'm going to go very quiet and I'm just going to be socially awkward in that situation. So, light-hearted banter for me, there needs to be a level of interest. So, if I met another introvert who perhaps similarly to me doesn't initiate the conversation because maybe they're not sure about what we're going to chat about, chances are we're both going to sit in fairly awkward silence. Unless it, no, that's not what I'm trying, because that would be like a one-on-one situation, which would be different. Yeah. I don't know if that helps. You're
Well,
asking how it
I
feels. To me, it's fun to meet new people. There is an element of, I really
yeah.
enjoy meeting new people. That to me is very fun. And the thought of maybe collecting a new friend to me is a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
I have done the whole, I've sent emails to people before that I have just liked the sound of, and they happen to be local to me and been like, hey, do you want to meet up and go for a coffee? So when I became an eating disorder therapist, I found the closest eating disorder therapist to me and just sent her an email. That was 4 years ago, and we've become good friends since then. When you say how it feels, I assume because I like meeting new people and I want to see if I'd like to be your friend, I assume everyone else would also like to see it.
Yeah. You and I have had a conversation before about the way we experience how people feel about us. And I always say, I assume walking into any situation that I have to earn my right to be there. I have to earn my right to be
Mhm.
liked. And to you, you assume you go in that people like you and unless you do something to make them not, right? So I'm coming off the back foot and you're coming off the front foot. When I go into situations of any kind socially, unless it is an explicitly about socializing, so a party wouldn't fit. But I'm talking about getting into a cab or an Uber, getting my hair cut, sitting next to somebody on a plane, otherwise just being in parallel to another human being where the point isn't to socialize. I am absolutely 100% going into that situation with the idea that like this is me time and other people are just near me. I have no interest in like making a connection. So when you told me that you got into your Uber and chatted the entire way, I like this is something that my brain is like, what do you that sucks. Like, you know, like why? And of course, there's this part of me that's like, how rude. You know what I mean? Again, there's some kind of judgment of this. And also, I understand the joy of connecting. It's not like I hate people. And when I can connect with someone, I like it, but I don't go into a situation wanting that. I go into a situation being like, this is my time to like think, gather, kind of just like organize my thoughts or just center maybe. I don't know if it's some kind of just like, and then once I have enough of that, if I want, I will then try to approach you. But somebody who talks to me on a plane, who's coming from your position, I will find it inconvenient. But at the same time, will think it's great and will be like, what a friendly person. What a person who's just trying to connect. What a human. How
Mhm.
human of them. And I'll kind of feel a little bit bad about it, but at the same time I might resent it. So it's like both going on at the same time.
I don't strike up conversations with people on a plane. It's too close. If you're sitting right next to someone and you turn to speak to somebody that you don't know, your faces are like a foot apart. So I'm not going to initiate
Yeah.
that. If I get into an Uber or a taxi and I'm on my own, for me, that feels super awkward not to talk, not to say something, because then there's just this silence like hanging in the air unless they've got the radio going or something like that. There's something about creating a certain
Huh.
comfort level there. So plane is like too
Ah,
close, not quite comfortable. Although if somebody chats to me on a plane, I'm delighted. I'm like, great,
not
we're chatting,
delighted.
okay, let's do this. I'm not an initiator on a plane because I know that for me is a situation where I know that some people wouldn't want to. I had an occasion when I was getting, it was getting the coach to the airport actually, and I was in the queue for the coach, and I was chatting to a lady in the queue, and she was, I think she was in her 70s, and she'd come down on the coach, and we were just making chit chat, as you do, Steph. You're like,
Yeah,
no.
right. You say this like now my brain's like
but then when we
recalibrate.
but then when we got on the coach, we were actually seated together, which we didn't realize when we were queuing up. So I was like, okay, is this going to be a chatty journey? Is it not? And because we'd already started talking, I was thinking, okay, I guess we carry on. And so I tried to take the conversation deeper. So I was asking her a few more questions about her life. And then when I found out she was a widow, her whole demeanor changed, like her whole energy changed. And I felt this kind of shut down. And she went really quiet. And we then just fell into silence for like an hour and a quarter. And I felt a real sense of, I felt like I'd done something wrong. I'd overstepped a mark. I'd made somebody feel really uncomfortable when all I'd wanted to do was try to connect. And I think it was too much. I was too much. It was too much. Of course, I'm going to go there. That's my story. But that was my
You're
conclusion.
right.
And in that situation, I think that's probably true.
You do? I mean, I would think you just happened to land in a part of the conversation that s- triggered her, but
Mm.
not that you did it. Just that it's a reality that she ran up against that created a feeling in her that then
Mm.
she needed to like change course.
Yeah. So I tried to change the subject and I shared a couple of things about myself, and there was no response or questions back.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
and
was
not at that
like,
point.
yeah. So then that was the point. That's where I really felt the energy change. And I thought, okay, I was going to say back
Yeah.
away, but I couldn't. I was sat next to her. I'm curious to just touch on the idea of transitions as introvert versus extrovert. For me, if
Hmm.
I've had a weekend with people, or even I've had it before where I've been hosting and I've had a number of people around, that moment when everyone was gone and I was left on my own felt like the initial shift, you sighing, the initial shift felt painful. But like pulling off a band aid, I was okay after a bit, but the initial
Mm.
15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour of going from that to suddenly being on my own. And what's really helped that I don't experience it nearly as intensely anymore, is the cats. But before
Yeah.
cats, that was it was a really, really difficult time for me, that transition. And I didn't understand what that feeling was,
Uh,
and I still don't have a name for it other than extreme discomfort as I try to shift.
well,
Yeah.
no, go ahead.
No, I was like,
You ended so abruptly,
oh no.
just like me, just like an introvert.
I didn't want to be too
I
much.
was okay. When I initially heard you say that, I was like, I don't relate because I'm thinking about how I have, I host, I was about to say how I have to host. I have to host birthday parties. I have to host holidays. And I do feel like that. I feel like I have to. And it's like a chore. And when I shut the door after everybody goes, I am so relieved. That's originally what I thought and originally what I related to. But then I thought about when I go away with my girlfriends, we go away every couple of years on vacation, like just us. And we spend these 4 or 5 days just completely together. I enjoy every minute. I don't need space from them. I do, but like not from them, like because we can all parallel play. So it's not like an issue. And when we all get out of the car as the Uber drops us off one by one, that feeling happens to me. And I'm thinking, that's interesting. What's the difference? And I think it's because there is something about hosting that requires this superficial conversation that takes so much out of me versus when I'm with my friends and it's all I'm talking about, that conversation that the deep mean it's not even necessarily deep, it's just so easy. There is no performing at all. It doesn't take energy from me. It gives it back. And so I'm wondering about like there's more to this than just introversion and extroversion. I think it's about like maybe like what we're getting from people and what that's doing to us, like what kinds of energies it takes to be around people. And maybe for you, like you always are getting energy from people. And maybe for an introvert, we absolutely can get energy from people, but it has to be the right relationship or like, you know what I mean? It has to be. And that's where the energy comes. But in other situations, we can't perform. And in one case, it would be a relief, but in another case, it would be that same feeling. I understand that feeling of like, now I'm alone and they're gone. And that transition away from being connected to other people in this way that makes me so happy to not being. So I don't think that's something that an introvert doesn't understand. I just think they're more selective about where those connections exist.
And I don't think in the moment the thought would ever be, "Oh, I'm on my own now. Oh, they've gone." Like, if I were to check in, I can't find the thoughts. It's so embodied. It's in my body. It's like I guess I've been filled up. I've been charged up with this energy, and now there's no stimulation, and I'm just here, charged up. And chances are, it's probably the end
Oh,
of the
you're
day.
charged up.
Yeah, it's the
Mm.
end of the day. I'm charged up, and now I have to sort of transition to this the different energy state I'm in when I'm on my own. And it's not that I mind being on
Oh.
my own, because I think another sort of misunderstanding perhaps about the extrovert is that they can't be on their own. I
Mm.
live on my own. I enjoy living on my own. And I'm okay in my company. It's the transitioning from company to not company. And it's also, I think, big gaps of time without social contact, which a weekend or even a full day is a big gap of time.
It's too much.
Um, not it's not that it's too it's too much. It's something about it almost feels like a stimulation thing, because it's not that I have to see people. It doesn't even have to be social. So I work, obviously I'm working with clients. And so for those days that I'm working, I might not see anybody socially outside of clients. That's fine. The extrovert in me is happy, or the whatever this process is in the extrovert in me is fulfilled just by having human interaction. And it helps that they're very deep and meaningful conversations as well, because it's therapy. It's not just chit chat. I run therapy groups, and the energy I get from a therapy group is way higher than the one on one. And I also
Yes.
do a support meeting on a Sunday. And that support meeting at 8 p.m. on a Sunday at the end of the weekend, most of the time there's a little part of me that's like, oh, I'm tired and I want to go to bed and I've got the support meeting. But every single time without fail, and I mean every single time without fail, I'm energized by doing that meeting. The second I sit down and the meeting start, like I feel it in my body, like the energy come up, like people, hi, people. I just
Yeah.
really like people.
But I run groups too, and I sometimes will have the best one. Those groups you have sometimes
Yeah.
where you're just like, there's nothing better. I'm connected. We're all connected with each other, and it's this like almost existential. But as a higher energy person to begin with, who lives up in more of an anxious place, I'm always buzzing inside. That's great and I love it. But I also, when it's over, I'm like, I need to come down here. And I think that this idea of like where the nervous system lives is also a consideration here that's different than introvert extrovert of like, do we normally live up here? And stimulation is connection. And so is it introversion that wants to come down, or is it, I need to kind of destimulate? I need to kind of come down to regulation this way, whereas you might be coming from down here and coming up. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I think that there's so many variables here that I don't know if we can ever strictly talk about introversion and extroversion by itself, because I'm relating to this connecting piece and running groups and finding like getting something from it. But I'm also relating to the relief afterwards, whereas you're not. Like that transition to me is what I need. The transition is like, that's a lot of stimulation for a long time. And I love it. I love it. I love it. But I also got to come down here.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when I'm with my friends, like I was describing before, it's not so up here. It's like, it's just like this steadiness. And then when I'm alone, it's a bit like, or like maybe I'm going back into my anxiety, and that like, it's like where the energy shifts are happening. And so I wonder if we're all talking about managing and tolerating the energy shifts, but some of us are coming from a higher energy plane or returning to a higher energy plane versus a lower one, and that might matter.
Yes. Yes. I'm thinking of my friend Sam, who's the extrovert. She runs more anxious, and she will come off a group. She sent me voice notes before after she's run a group. She's just like, it's absolutely bang. She is up here. She is on the roof. And I wouldn't say that I experience it like that. I come off and there is a lift. It's more like I would think of it more like a mood boost. To me, it's like taking some medication to give me an upper. But that is really interesting in terms of, I guess, how we self regulate through this
Mm,
introversion extroversion process is part of it, and the other side of it. So, of course, we're going to have anxious extroverts and we're going to have lower energy
right,
introverts as well.
right.
I'm also imagining the
Mm.
ambiverts listening to this and going, oh, yeah, I relate to that and that and that and that. So just a nod. Yes, there are going to be people who swing between the two,
Yeah.
and it's a scale. So there's some people who might think of themselves as a little bit this or a little bit that. I would probably think of myself at the higher end, but not right at the top in terms of extroversion, but only because I know a few people who are more extroverted than me. If I didn't know them, then maybe I'd think I was the. I was going to say top extrovert. I don't mean the top extrovert. I just mean
It's
top
the
of the
top,
extroverts.
top of the class.
Yeah, it's a relief. To be honest, to really understand the introvert as an extrovert, it is a relief because I can, in my cognitive mind, be able to hold on to this idea that it's not personal. When my introverted friends just need a bit of space, that it's not personal. And then my brain's going, sometimes it might be. There could be a time when it actually is. And let's be fair,
Sometimes.
that could be true as well. But that for me is the relief that I can take away. There is, I think, just in terms of my own conditioning, my go to is always going to be to feel it. I think this for me sums up what it's like for me with my introvert friends. And it's this meme that I saw once that I don't know if I've related to much harder. It says, being friends with introverts is hard sometimes. Did they die? Are they just recharging? Are they Batman now? The suspense is killing me.
We're very mysterious, you know.
Exactly that. So there's all this space to project stuff into. And of
Uh,
course, there's this other meme, which is a very famous one. I know you and I have touched on it before. It's in response, there was an article in the Oprah magazine, which the title of the article was Introverted, Here's How to Be More Social. And somebody retweeted it and they said, just once, I'd like to see an article like Extroverted,
yeah,
here's some tips on how to be quiet and reflective.
I love that. And I think that's why
Of
it's,
course you do.
well,
It's
because we
very
don't get enough.
validating. Yeah.
The meme I like, I don't know if it's a meme or whatever, but that's the one that goes around saying, like, basically, I'm an introvert who's just been adopted by a whole bunch of extroverts my whole life. I don't even know how to make friends. And that has been true for me. And I really appreciate extroverts taking me on because that is how I navigated a lot of my life. Like I always just became the friend and then carried on their backs, like, you know, and that's just what I do. Even if I then became a central figure in a group, it still started off of being invited in by an extrovert. And I really appreciate you guys doing that legwork. Um, but I also I think that, like, it's funny for an introvert to be friends with other introverts because we don't hang out much. It's like takes a lot
Yeah.
more for us to like.
My friend who's an introvert has an introvert friend, and they have this very explicit agreement that either of them can cancel at any time. And I remember her
Yeah.
telling me about this. I was thinking, that isn't, I don't know if you're hinting at something here that isn't going to fly with me.
Well, I have this one friend who's an introvert, and we do make a point to get together as off, you know, at a certain regular interval. But it's neither of us. You can always tell we're like, maybe, like just like maybe not. Let's see how we feel. So it's like this mutual respect of that. But I think it's helpful to understand these differences because, at least on my side of the fence, there's something about understanding that an extrovert needs that as much as I need to not necessarily have that. That's not about that they know something I don't or they're like better than me. It's, I guess it's hard to explain this nuance, but it feels just more like, oh, that's just how you're built. It's not like you have a skill that I missed. You know, it's literally how you're built, which is a helpful thing for me. And the other thing that's very helpful for introverts who are dealing with like coping with being an introvert is there's a book called The Introvert Advantage by Marty Olson Laney. It's called it's How Quiet People Can Thrive in an Extroverted World. That gives a little bit more, I think, validity to the introvert experience and sort of helps us feel. I read this book a while ago, and it helps us feel, yeah, like, okay, I make sense.
Well, dear listener, what did you take away from this episode?
And what questions remain? I'm thinking of some. I'm thinking about those introverts who have really good social skills and like where do they fall in and things like that. But and if you've got any thoughts after listening to this that you'd like to share with us, well, we don't have an email yet, but
We will do by the time this comes out. If you
maybe
look
we
in the
will.
description, we will. We'll have to set up a YouTube channel, so we'll have to create an email
Okay.
there. So we don't know what our email address is going to be yet. Just have a look in the description below and drop us a message
Or
or
comment.
comment on the YouTube video.
Yeah.
Uh,
And share with your friends who might need to hear it as well. You're introverts or extroverts.
yes, if you're introverted, sharing this with your extroverted friends could be really helpful. And if you're extroverted, sharing it with your introverted friends could be really helpful because so much on having these conversations with you, Steph. I can see so many miscommunications that have happened in my friendships over the years from not understanding this process. And I would love to
Pretty
save
cool.
everybody in the world from going through that pain.
We're a healing podcast.
We are.
Well, all right. Good talking to you. Got to go.
Okay, bye.